Let's have some fun this weekend. Why not? I have never done a mailbag on the Heat Report, and I was just thinking, why not answer some of the most pressing questions, from Heat Nation, because I love interacting with you guys, and that's the best part of this channel is that we have such close interaction here on YouTube. And if you want to be more involved with the channel and get your questions on the channel potentially in the future, make sure you are subscribed so you can see me asking you guys for questions on our community page. So don't miss out on future mailbags and hit that sub button. But let's jump straight into it. And Jay the Fox leads us off here, and he has a great question. Do you think we can acquire Damian Lillard before the preseason starts? And do you think we should give up Jaime Jaquez for this trade? I don't, but I want to see what you're going to say about it. Appreciate you. You know what, Jay the Fox? I appreciate you for being a real one. I always see you sharing some of these YouTube videos and commenting and being a subscriber, so appreciate you, Jay the Fox. But let's get into this answer here. And I do think the Heat acquire Damian Lillard before the season starts. You might ask yourself why? Well, here's the reason. The Heat don't want to have this drag out into training camp, into preseason, because players are going to be reporting for camp in late September, early October, like Tyler Hero, like Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Jaime Jaquez Jr., or Nikola Jovic. And they're not going to even know if they're playing for the Heat when the season actually comes around. So it's going to be odd trying to build chemistry, build a roster, get playing time, get some chemistry when half of the roster doesn't even know if they are going to be on the team when the season rolls around. And on Portland's side of things, Damian Lillard is going to show up to Trailblazers camp to make sure he collects that $50 million he's owed. So he's not going to sit out. And it's going to ruin the chemistry over there in Portland. So I think both sides are going to want to get this done. Cronin's playing hardball now and not giving in, but I do believe they come together late August, very early September to get this deal done so this overhanging cloud of Damian Lillard doesn't hang over to both training camps. Now, the second part of that question, would I give up Jaime Jaquez in the trade? I think I would, and it's hard to really get connected to the 18th overall pick. He played in a couple summer league games, looked right and looked good, sure. But when you're talking about acquiring a top 5 point guard in the league, a top 20 player in the association, someone that would make the Heat title favorites in my mind as long as you keep Jimmy and Bam, which they would. So you create a Dame, Jimmy, Bam, big three, which is so good. I think you have to be willing to part ways with some of your younger assets. Am I going to give up 3 or 4 first-round picks, Jaquez, Jovic, and Tyler Hero? Probably not. That's a little rich when you're bidding against yourselves, but I am willing to give up Jaime Jaquez in opposed to maybe a Nikola Jovic because I like Jovic's potential more. I know Jaquez might help this team win now, but I think I'd be willing to part ways with Jaquez and try to keep Jovic because I am very, very bullish on the 27th pick from last season. Let's move on to Ron Diddy. 912 says, what are the chances the Heat add Christian Wood? Another good question here. This is why Heat fans are the best because they are intelligent and know some ball. But when I think of the chances the Heat acquire Christian Wood in free agency, I give it about a 50% chance. I think that's fair. A lot of signs point to maybe it being higher, but I do think Pat Riley would have some questions of his own when it comes to Christian Wood. He is a fantastic ball player that can add so much to this Heat roster. He has been a bucket getter over the past 4 seasons. He's been able to grab some boards as well. One common denominator for him, though, is that he hasn't really been on good basketball teams. Pistons 4 years ago weren't good. Rockets for 2 years weren't good. And the Mavericks this year underperformed a lot, and you could say he was maybe a contributor to that fact. And there is a dilemma when it comes to Christian Wood, right? Like, I love the potential of him being the sixth man for the Miami Heat, coming off the bench and averaging 14, 15 points, potentially leading that second unit in scoring. But there are major questions about his defense. He doesn't give a lot of effort, and when he does, he still is getting cooked, and his ability to win. How would he fit into the Heat culture, into the Heat system? These are very massive questions that when you're trying to build a championship contending roster, you have to think of. I don't know if Wood would fit, but I do believe the Heat have the inside track to land him. I think Pat Riley would be able to take a swing on Christian Wood for the vet min, and there's been reports of the Heat being interested in the past. But I'll ask you guys. It's guessing time. I'm not asking, do you think they, or do you want to? I am asking, do you think the Heat will sign Christian Wood? Will Pat Riley make the move? Type S for sign, type P for pass. Let me know in the comment section. Let's move on here to Zach. Oh, that's a long name, brother, but I'm just going to ride with Zach. He asked, will Dame get traded before the season or during? Also, Jimmy for MVP numbers. So, two-part question. Let's start with the Dame part. Will he get traded before the season or during the season? If he does get moved, I am going to bet that it is before the season. And if it's during the season, that would be very surprising. It certainly wouldn't be in the beginning part of the season. If Dame got moved during this upcoming year, it would be in February during that NBA trade deadline. But I don't think the Portland Trail Blazers want to hold on to Damian Lillard that long into the season because it would potentially make them not have a high pick if they're going for a rebuild. But hey, if they're trying to compete and now they're in the middle, it's just a weird situation. So I do think Damian Lillard gets traded before the season. It wouldn't make sense for the Blazers to hold on to him into the regular season. But let's talk about that second part of the question. And Jimmy for MVP, what would his numbers look like? Well, I kind of threw together a little bit of what I think his MVP numbers would have to look like in order to win. And this is what I came up with. He'd have to play 69 games. Oh, I didn't even realize it did 69. That's very nice. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But anyway, 27.8 points per game, 6.3 rebounds, 5.5 assists while shooting 48.7% from the field and 35% from three. Maybe this would get him to win MVP, but I'm willing to bet Jimmy Butler will not win MVP. And I'm sorry to break your heart. As much as I'd love to see Jimbo holding up that trophy, he just won't score enough points in the regular season, and he won't play enough to win MVP. And especially if the Heat do acquire Damian Lillard, there is no way Jimmy Butler wins MVP. If the Heat get Dame, there is a better chance Damian Lillard wins MVP than Jimmy Butler. But let's say in a perfect world for Jimmy, the Heat don't get Damian Lillard. Jimmy's the number one on this roster. Upcoming again, he would have to average close to 28, 29 points per game, and the Heat would have to be so far and away the best team in the NBA to win that number because there hasn't been too many MVP winners over the past 3 or 4 seasons that have averaged less than 30 points per game, and that is simply just not Jimmy's game, so he's not an MVP type of guy. Let's move on to Miami FC culture. Shout out to Lionel Messi, man. He's bringing some culture to that 305. They look unstoppable right now. But he asked, are you going to have in real life watch parties this season in Miami? So unfortunately, I will not be doing in real life watch parties. I'll say this because I am currently living in Dallas, Texas. That's where Chat Sports headquarters are. If I was in Miami, I would definitely be doing it for the culture. But because we don't live in Miami, I don't think I'll be able to get down there and have in real life watch parties, unfortunately. But I will say this. We will potentially be having watch parties throughout the NBA season here on the Heat Report for a live stream. And I'll say this, if you guys want those watch parties to happen, make sure you hit that sub button because if you guys subscribe and continue to be interactive and continue to love the content we put out, I can convince our bosses to let me do some watch parties throughout the fall and early winter when the Heat are hoping to win another title. So make sure you hit that sub button. If you do, you might get some watch parties this upcoming NBA season. All right, let's move on to another question. I don't know, GOAT 9394 asks, make a list of potential players you would want before the season starts. Man, another fantastic question. Heat fans are bringing it today. And I'll say this, the players that I want on this list are all free agents, not trade. There's a different category of players that I would trade for outside of Damian Lillard that would make this team better. I just stuck with some free agents that he could easily sign. And these are the 5 guys I came up with. Christian Wood headlines the list, that 6-man forward center hybrid. Kelly Oubre Jr. could be a forward off the bench that gives you 13, 14 a night. If he could just be more efficient with his 3-ball, I would love to see him be that 6th-man scoring option for Miami. Justice Winslow, a little reunion for Rook number 1. We already brought back Rook 2 and Josh Richardson. Could Winslow be the missing piece here? And he could also handle the rock a little bit, so I wouldn't hate him as a backup guard to Damian Lillard. They just played together in Portland, so they already have some chemistry on that aspect as well. TJ Warren is an interesting man. He's probably the guy I'd want the most, if I'm going to be completely honest, because of his ability to score in bunches and be a three-point shooter. Because if he shares the floor with Jimmy, Bam, Dame, they're going to have a lot of attention on them. So you're going to have players that can shoot because they're going to sag off those guys, and then they're going to have to be able to hit catch-and-shoot threes. T.J. Warren can do that. I really would like to see T.J. Warren on this Heat roster on the vet min. Terrence Ross is the last guy in this list, kind of same reason as Warren. Ross has killed the Heat in the past for the Magic. He had a tough year last year with the Magic and Suns, but in that Heat culture, I think he'd be able to turn it around and have a good shooting year, bounce back year off the bench for the Miami Heat. Those are 5 guys that I wouldn't hate the Heat signing to a vet min contract to fill out this roster, assuming they trade for Damian Lillard. But I'll ask you guys this. Who is someone you want to sign? I know it's a little counterintuitive because my guy Zach just asked me who I wanted, but I'll throw it out to more Heat fans out there that didn't see Zach's question and are not Zach, is who do you want? Let me know in the comment section. G Morg up next, and this arguably is my favorite question on our mailbag. Who's in your all-time Heat starting 5? If I was the coach, if I was Pat Riley / Eric Spoelstra, picking my 5 guys to go against everyone else in the association, all-time teams, who would I want going out there to start the first 5 minutes? And this is what I picked. Let me know. It's going to be interesting. I want to see what you guys have to say about my all-time starting 5, but I'm going Tim Hardaway starting at the 1. He played about 370 games for the Heat. He averaged 17 points a night and about 8 assists when he played for the Miami Heat. So Hardaway, one of the best point guards in Heat history. Obviously, the GOAT of the Miami Heat, Dwayne Wade, would be my starting 2 guard. And the rest is where it got interesting. So I won't be lying to you guys. I originally had LeBron at the 3, Chris Bosh at the 4, but then I was thinking, well, if I wanted to play in this modern era, I'm going to move LeBron to the 4 and put Jimmy Butler in at the 3. What Jimmy's done over the past 4 seasons for Miami is always and has already warranted him a spot in my starting 5. Being the number 1 option on 2 titles teams is terrific, and he embodies Heat culture. You have LeBron at the 4, and then I went with Shaq at the 5 over Alonzo Mourning. Shaq was able to help D-Wade deliver the first title to the Heat in the team history. I think Shaq at the 5, and I'm only looking at current Shaq. This isn't Lakers Shaq. This was what he was for the Miami Heat. Kind of tough putting him over Zoe, but I think I would ride with Shaq to round out my starting 5. Let me know what you guys have to say about my starting 5 in the comments section. Last question on today's show is from It's Spears 457 asks, is Jimmy Butler a Hall of Famer? And this is another good question because I've seen this talked about on some NBA Twitter discussions. And I'll say this. Jimmy Butler is absolutely an NBA Hall of Famer. You might think it's a little crazy that Jimmy isn't a Hall of Famer. And that might be your NFL brain kind of warping in here because the NBA Hall of Fame is much easier to make than the NBA Hall of Fame. And when you look at Jimmy Butler in comparison to some current Hall of Famers, we just mentioned Tim Hardaway as an all-time Heat starting point guard, but if you look at Jimmy Butler's career accolades against Tim Hardaway's, against Reggie Miller's, 2 guys already in the Hall of Fame, this is how it stacks up. Jimmy has more All-Stars. He has more or the same All-NBAs. Jimmy Butler has had more 20-point-per-game scoring seasons than both Hardaway and Miller. Jimmy is a way better defender, making All-NBA defense 5 times in comparison to Hardaway and Miller's zilch. And then when you talk about being in the NBA Finals, being a number 1 option on a championship contending team, Jimmy has done it twice in 2019-2020, and then this past year in 22-23. Reggie Miller did it once. Hardaway has never done it. So I do think that when you look at Jimmy's career accolades in comparison to a couple of other current NBA Hall of Famers, I think Jimmy Butler absolutely deserves to be enshrined in the NBA Hall of Fame. Appreciate everyone for tuning in today's video. I love doing this mailbag, giving back to some of you guys, answering your questions. It was a blast, so we'll probably do it in the future as well. But make sure you do give me a follow on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff. I'm talking everything Heat, and if you just want to have a fun interaction, have a fun follow when it comes to the Heat Twitter, I'm your guy, so make sure you do give me that follow.